At 21, Susan Atkins would become the most visible member of a ragtag bunch of killers, the Manson family. A one-time nice little kid as she grew up in Northern California, Susan became a popular babysitter, captained her school swimming team, and sang in the church choir. Then when her mother died, Susan Atkins ran away from home, and she fell in with a dangerous little man who had spent virtually his whole life in jails. And so at 18, Susan Atkins became one of Charlie's girls, as they were called, one of the first. More would join her, and in time, all of them would develop a fanatical loyalty to Charles Manson, nurtured by his persuasiveness and hyped by the unrelenting use of drugs. So after 300 LSD trips in 2 years, when Manson sent Susan Atkins and others of his family to kill, they did it. Later, looking, sounding, and acting crazy, Susan Atkins would spill it all and tell a grand jury what happened. With terrible detail, she would describe how she murdered movie actress Sharon Tate and her yet unborn baby, and then participated in the murder of 4 others on that hot summer's night at the actress's Hollywood home. Susan Atkins is 28 now. She's just ended her first 7 years of a life term. She has spent 5 of them here at the California Women's Institution in San Bernardino County. She's just had her first parole hearing and been turned down. But the people who work with her here say that she's made a remarkable change in the last 2 years. They say she's become a devout Christian, and she says she wants only to serve God. Susan Atkins feels that her horrifying experience with drugs can be a lesson to those that use them or think about using them. She hasn't spoken with a reporter since the trial in 1970. She got word to me that she wanted to talk about the dangers of drug use, that she also wanted to reveal something new about the murders. What happened that night you all went to Sharon Tate's house? What really happened?
Well, I remember getting in the car with Tex and Tex Watson and my other 2 co-defendants, 3 co-defendants actually. And before I ever got in the car, Tex and I had our own special little stash of cocaine. I think it was cocaine or methadone, I'm not sure which. It was speed, and we both snorted some speed and got in the car. We were very, very wired. And we drove to the house with instructions to kill everyone in the house.
From Charlie?
Yeah. And not just that, but that we were instructed to go all the way down every house, hit every house on the
street?
On the street, yes.
And kill all the people in those houses?
Kill all the people in all those houses. And we went into the house, and I remember that as we went in, a car came up to the driveway, and I remember Tex getting out, and without saying anything, there were gunfire shot. I was in the bushes, and
that's when the young boy Stephen Parent was killed.
Was killed
in the car outside.
Right. The people in the house were all brought into the living room and tied up, and I remember that Wojtek Bakowski, I believe is his name, I had tied his hands with a towel and then was instructed to kill him. And I raised the knife that I had in my hand, and I couldn't put the knife down. I couldn't bring it down. It was just as though there was a force there that held my wrist, and I couldn't move. And as he saw that I couldn't move, then he very easily undid the ties, the towel that I tied his wrist with, and he and I began to fight. And I remember I was screaming for help, and he was screaming for help, and then Tex came and helped me, and I was left to sit and watch Sharon Tate. And about that time, all I can remember seeing is people just scattering in different places and running in different places, and I was left sitting with Sharon Tate, and she was talking to me, and I remember that I had absolutely, I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing for her for her life and for the life of her baby. And Jesus. I remember when we first went in, one of the people said, "Who are you?" And Tex said, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." And I remember that in my conscience, it's so alive in me, even just recalling it. I remember that I had gone so far and there was no turning back. Even if I had wanted to run, even if I had wanted to leave, I couldn't. It was like I was caught in something that I had no control over. I had absolutely no say-so as to what was happening there. I was just like a tool in the hands of the devil, is the only way I can put it. And I believe that it was by the grace of God that my hand did not go down with that knife on Wojciech Kwiatkowski's chest. I believe that...
Well, who did kill those people?
that night?
Yeah.
Tex.
During her trial in 1970 and 71, she seemed a horrifying combination of confused little girl and cold-blooded murderer. And like all of the others in the Manson family, Susan Atkins' loyalty to the man who led her life where it went was absolute. So when Charles Manson shaved his hair off, she did too. And then, just as he had done, she and her co-defendants all carved X's into their foreheads. Today, she says her bizarre behavior was born out of Manson's evil persuasiveness and fed by her constant drug use. During her Manson years, Susan Atkins dropped acid at least 300 times, and she smoked, swallowed, shot up, and snorted every other drug in sight. And although she had no drugs in her first 5 years of imprisonment, she says it took her that long to fully regain her consciousness, to even begin to realize what she had done. All of the LSD, all of the other drugs had put her in a fog, which she didn't begin to come out of until 2 years ago.
You'd have to understand what acid does to the mind in order to understand how a person can get confused behind drugs. And I would take a thesis, writing a book on what LSD can do to the mind. But
it was powerful enough to keep you in a fog for all those years, even after you stopped using.
I used to think that you came down off an acid trip after 12 hours. That's not true. Every time you take LSD, you rises or expands, and the moral fiber of your character, which is put in you, or when you grow up, everybody grows up with different morals according to their culture. Okay, when you take acid, your mind expands beyond these moral characteristics and your concepts of right and wrong. So you step out beyond those bounds, and when you step out beyond those bounds, the imagination begins to take over. And the imagination can be a very deceitful thing. It's a fantasy. And when you take acid, you go out beyond that, you think you're coming back to where you started from. Originally, you don't. And every time you drop acid, you get a little bit further away from reality. And I took so much acid that I just was what I would term spaced. And it took me many years to what I term now re-enter. And that was just through not having any acid and having to deal with reality every day.
Well, you say you're operating from a sense of complete consciousness now and reality. Then looking back from this point for you, what you were and what you did must be terrifying.